Hey everybody, welcome to the Calitraveler Podcast Show. I'm your host, Paul. Once again, welcome to the Calitraveler Podcast Show. I'm your host, Paul. Welcome to episode 11 of the Calitraveler Podcast Show. In this week's podcast, we're going to be discussing about hopes and aspirations and how to achieve them and how to overcome failure. So the idea for this podcast came from a conversation I was having with a fellow American expat. And he and I were discussing about his business ideas and dreams that we both are hoping to achieve in our lives someday. And he said, why not talk about it in this week's podcast? I told him, it's a good idea. And we were talking about ideas. He was talking about how he's wanting to start business internationally and be able to help change the world, make it a better place. And I think that is something that we all are wanting to achieve, is to help make the world a better place. Now, there are many dreams of mine that I have already achieved, and there are many that I still have yet to achieve. So first and foremost, one of the biggest dreams that I had, and it was since high school, was to live abroad. Now, 2 years ago, I began that journey when I moved here to Thailand. And I'll admit it wasn't an easy road. It was extremely difficult, it was exhausting, it was stressful, and there were times that I just wanted to give up. But as each day passed by and the next day came along, everything started to make more sense, everything started to get a little bit easier. Okay, so I'll admit it. As my studies have progressed, they've gotten increasingly harder. But other than that, I'm very proud of myself because I took the leaps that I needed to keep moving forward and not to keep going back. But there have been dreams of mine that have ended in failure. Now, for instance, universities that I had applied at back home that I didn't get into. That was a setback because you had everything set to go to this place or to study this field, but then it didn't work out in your favor. But instead of, oh, poor me, if only I had done better with my life, fuck that. You get out there and you keep moving forward. I used to study criminal justice a few years ago, and I wanted to be a police officer. But at the same time, I started to deal with issues with my left wrist. Sometimes my wrist would lock up. And that's when I decided to go for something that I was most passionate about, which was digital media. So I ended up doing that. It wasn't a setback per se, but it was more of, okay, this isn't what you're meant to do, but rather what you want to really do in life is go into media. And that's exactly what I've been doing. I've been studying it for 2 years, and it's one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. And you have to remember that some of the greatest dreams have actually been achieved through failure. If you've ever heard of Mark Zuckerberg, CEO and founder of Facebook, he's a dropout from Harvard University. And now he's one of the most successful people in the tech industry. And all after dropping out of Harvard, an Ivy League school in the United States. Steve Jobs is another example. He was also a dropout, but he then founded Apple with Steve Wozniak, and now it is one of the largest and richest companies in the world. And all of these things were accomplished through failure. And now, any dream that you have that does end up in failure, it's okay. It's okay to call yourself a failure in that instance. What you do is you just go back to the drawing board and you say, okay, well, it didn't work out here. I'm going to do this. And then you try it. Doesn't work out. You go back to the drawing board and you keep doing it. You don't give up. No matter how much you just want to pull your hair out or hit your head against a wall because it's not working out the way I want to, don't. You got to keep your head up. You got to dust yourself off. You got to be optimistic. And you're going to be okay. There were some business ideas that I actually had a long time ago where I had thought about possibly starting a restaurant in the States. Well, after some setbacks, I decided not to pursue it because in the end I realized that it was actually going to cost me more than it was going to profit me. So, yeah, I gave up on that. And, here I am at like 19, 20 years old with this idea. But as I got older and I started to learn more about myself, I realized where I was meant to be. And that's where I am today. The moral of the story is, no matter how big or how small, how silly or how complex a dream of yours is, just know that as long as it's in your heart and it is in your mind, you can accomplish anything you want. Don't let anybody stop you. Don't even let yourself stop you. You just keep going. Podcast can be heard weekly on my YouTube channel, so subscribe to Calitraveler 93, as well as liking my Facebook page, Calitraveler 93. And the podcast will be available on Spotify and other platforms.